everyone. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Up next on Another View, your step-by-step guide to the voting process. Everything you need to know about registration, absentee ballots, early voting, how to study the issues, what to do on Election Day. Now, more than ever, your voice matters. Don't let confusing ballots or robocalls, scare tactics, keep you from your constitutional right. We have help from Norfolk City Treasurer Daun Hester and Ms. Leelynn Brady with the League of Women Voters, Southampton Roads. Voting. Absolutely no excuses. We'll talk about it next on Another View, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. The 15th Amendment to the Constitution guaranteed the right to vote to every man, regardless of race. Former slaves took that right seriously and elected a number of African Americans to Congress. Now, that was during Reconstruction, and it didn't last long. In fact, Reconstruction was over by 1877, ushering in the Jim Crow era. And that's when all kinds of tactics were used to keep blacks from voting. Poll taxes, counting jelly beans, literacy tests, and terrorism from groups like the Ku Klux Klan. In the late 50s and throughout the 60s, African Americans fought hard for their civil rights, including the right to vote. And in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed. People died for the right to vote. So why are there an estimated 76.2 million Americans of voting age or older who are not registered to vote? Are you one of them? Are you afraid of the voting process? Do you think it's not worth your time or your effort? Our guests today are here to help you navigate the voting process. We welcome to Another View Leelynn Brady, First Vice President of the League of Women Voters, Southampton Roads. How you doing, Leelynn?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today. And back with us is Norfolk City Treasurer and longtime public servant, Ms. Daun Hester. Hey, Daun. How you doing?
I am great. Hello, everyone.
So, ladies, I went to the polls last Friday and cast my early vote, and I've been encouraging everyone to vote. Is there any reason you can give that people should not vote? Is there any excuse at all that says it's okay if you don't vote? Let's start with you, Daun.
Well, you know my answer to that question is no. There is no reason not to vote, because when you do your research, there is a candidate that you must select to represent you, whether it's at the federal, state, or local level. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you don't vote, you can't complain. But anyway, no, there's no reason not to vote.
Leelynn?
Yes, I agree with Ms. Daun. Exactly what she said. You need to be able to do your due diligence and do your research. You should not allow yourself to not vote solely because you're not educated enough to make a sound decision. You have a lot of time. You have a lot of time to do your research. Make sure that you choose the right person to represent you. Like Ms. Daun said, whether it's at a national level, a state level, a local level, and then make that decision. But you do need a vote. There's no reason why you shouldn't.
Audience, I'm going to bring you into this conversation very early today. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. I would love to hear from you if you already have voted, if you plan to vote by absentee ballot, if you plan to wait until November 3rd. And I'd also love to hear from people who haven't decided if you're actually going to vote. And if you aren't, no shame, but let us know why, because we'd love to be able to try to change your mind. We feel that strongly about the voting process and the keeping of democracy in our country. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Daun, I saw a wonderful story this week on News Channel 3 about you and your family, that you found the receipts from the poll tax that your family had to pay in order to vote. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. It's about 3.5 years ago. In fact, it was right after I was elected as treasurer. And it's been about that long since I lost my father.
Mm-hmm.
And so in going through his papers, it was one of those that he kept for himself and for my grandmother.
Wow.
So, that brought major tears, but it was, for me, that meant that was so important for him that he kept those records, because he never showed them to us. He may have forgotten that he had them, but to find them and to see what it cost for them. And, back then it was like $1.30 and something like that. But back during that time, because my father was 93 when he passed, that was a lot of money.
Wow. Do you know what year?
Yeah.
Do you remember what year the
What year
receipt?
was on the?
Yeah, what was on the receipt?
No, but I can go find them.
Just curious.
It was well, I wasn't around. I'll be 60. Look, I'll be 65 next week, so I wasn't around. So it's been longer than that.
Was there conversation in your house then, knowing that your father and your grandmother had gone through that and they had to scrimp and save in order to preserve that right? Was there a conversation in your household then that said, you know what, no matter what, you're going to vote, you're going to be a participant in the process?
Yeah, well, that was never an option for us to not participate. So they took us with them when they went to vote so that we could see that it was easy to do and what you had to do. So, we knew what the process was before we turned 18. And that, was for all of my siblings. And so none of us have ever missed an opportunity to vote. No matter what, we vote. It's just ingrained.
Yeah, and that's the way it was in my household. But Leelynn, I saw a story on one of the news stations a while ago where a young African-American football player was talking about the fact that growing up for him, he said they were much more concerned about, where their next meal was coming from, and that he had never even stepped foot in a voting booth. From a younger person's perspective, since you clearly are younger than Daun and I, is this something that your generation, are you guys talking about this? Are you recognizing why it has to happen? And what are the barriers that young people feel they're facing that keep them from the voting booth?
I feel like I'm pretty lucky in that the generation that I'm in right now is very politically active. A lot of the people that I surround myself with are very, they feel like voting is very important. So I've never really had to, I've never encountered anybody that hadn't thought that voting was not an option, that that voting was never important to them. So I haven't actually encountered that issue before, but I do understand the issue of, what is more important? Do I vote or do I take care of the essential needs as far as having a place to stay or food coming on the table and stuff like that? I do get that. But I also feel like, knowing who is responsible or who represents you that can be able to provide some of that resource to you and your community may also help alleviate those problems that you may have as far as helping to bring food to the table for those that need those additional resources, need that kind of support that they may not be able to get right now because the people that are in power don't see those people as those that can benefit from those types of resources, or just whatever their reasoning may be, they don't see that those funds could be allocated certain ways. So I'm very lucky that I haven't, voting has always been a priority for my family, has been a priority in the generation that I grew up in, and has been a priority for the young professionals that I've been able to surround myself with.
Well, that's a good thing. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Our phone lines are lit up. Let's go to Steve in Pocosin. Hi, Steve. You're on the air.
Thank you, Barbara. Just a very brief report. We're kind of old at our house, but we also want to vote to make America decent again. And so we solved it by going and voting early, and it worked out great, and there was nothing to be scared of. They had it all set up great, and I want to encourage people to just go vote early. It solves the problem, and you're done.
Okay.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks so much, Steve, for the call. We appreciate that. So, Daun, let's talk about that in-person voting. Can you describe to people specifically what it is that they should expect if they go to vote in person early?
Okay, so it's just like it's always been. You go in. You don't have to show your ID, but most people do. The person who is working the poll will check to make sure that you are registered. They will then move you to the next stop where you get your ballot. Then you go to the next stop where you complete your ballot, which is, circling in the dots of the people that you're voting for. And there are in Virginia three referendum items in Norfolk. I don't know how many are in other localities.
Mm-hmm.
And once you fill in you bubble in who you want, then you take it over to the machine. You put your ballot in that machine, and it records your vote. You get your I vote sticker, and you're out the door.
And you're done.
And you're done. So, like Steve, they made a plan. I do think everybody needs to make a plan. I decided to get my ballot. My husband and I got our ballots. I completed mine, and I turned my ballot in to the ballot box where you can vote early. So you can also take your ballot in. He decided to go with our son to vote. And so he took the ballot that he'd requested, turned it in, and then voted in person. So his vote is counted in the machine already.
Mm-hmm.
My ballot will not be counted until election night.
Until election night. And we did have a question from on our Facebook page where a listener wanted to know, if you vote early in person, will your vote be counted election night?
Yes. Because that's how, all across the country, when you hear so many people have voted already,
right?
That's how they know, because there's a tally every day of how many people have voted across the country. And that's just automatic.
Okay. And Leelynn, I want to ask you, and let's talk about the absentee ballot. Mm-hmm. So you request your absentee ballot. You can go online. Well, let me ask you, how do you request an absentee ballot, and what does it look like when you receive it?
So you can apply to receive an absentee ballot in the mail. You do have to make sure that you're a registered voter, so you can go to Department of Elections website.gov. Just check your registration status. You don't need an excuse or a reason to vote at home, especially right now during the pandemic. You can apply online at the elections.virginia.gov/citizens portal. You'll need your social security number, or you can do a paper application. The deadline to request your ballot is October 23rd, so that is coming up soon. I will just say that now. Ballots have been mailed out starting September 18th, so ballots have been starting to trickle in. There is a lot, so talking with the registrars, they said if you haven't gotten it yet, just be patient, because they're dealing with thousands and thousands. So, just be patient. If you filled it out if you filled out the request a while ago, but you still haven't gotten it yet, you're probably you'll be getting it soon. Once you get your ballot in the mail, fill it out as soon as possible so that you can mail it back, or you can drop it off at your at the drop-off locations that they have indicated. There are a few new drop-off locations that they have listed out. I believe it would be on the elections website, or you can drop it off at the general registrar's office.
And one thing that's on the absentee ballot that people do not have to worry about, my understanding, is the witness signature. Can you speak about that?
Yes, that's correct. So they did change that. You do not need to have a witness for this time around. I do want to say that's for the social distancing reasons. There was some sort of confusion on that earlier for the primaries, but they did make that official as far as not needing a witness to sign your absentee ballot. So just, you don't need that. If you feel like you need a witness, you don't. So just remember, you don't need that for this ballot.
And in order for your absentee ballot to count, what are the things, how should you go back to double check to make sure you've done everything you need to do?
So make sure that you provide all of the information requested on the back of envelope B, and that includes your name, your address, and your signature. You need to use both of the envelopes provided, even if you're taking it to a drop box. And you have to make sure that you fill out everything on the application form and follow the instructions that are provided to you on that form.
Okay. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Jay joins us from Newport News. Hi, Jay. You're on the air. Jay? If you can turn your radio down. Can you hear me?
800-940-2240. Jay joins us from Newport News. Hi, Barbara. How
Hi.
you doing?
Good. Can you turn your radio down so that we
There
can...
are two things
There
that
you
I
go.
wanted to say. One was, I think it's interesting and for people to know that there are organizations that are trying to help get out the vote, even in this pandemic. Virginia Organizing is one of those. Normally we would talk to people door to door. But this year we're using door hangers. And on one side of the door hangers has the registration information, and on the other, the methods of voting. So I think we need to, encourage other organizations to do that as well. We really need to get out the word.
And-
As for my voting, I did apply for an absentee ballot. It arrived at my house on day one. On day two, I dropped it in the box in Newport News. So, I didn't want to waste any time doing that. And I think people really need to know about drop boxes, because that is a method that I think is very easy for most people to do. And when I dropped it off, I can say that people were early voting, and that's an excellent way to go about getting your vote done, too.
And Jay, what is the deadline for registration?
I think the deadline for registration is the same day as the absentee ballot. People can register this year almost up to the time that they can vote.
Is that correct? I believe I thought I saw that it was the 13th was the deadline. Let me double check with Daun and with.
Yeah, please double check that. I might have. I'm old enough to have actually paid a poll tax, so you have to check my dates.
Jay, thanks so much for calling. Jay is with Virginia Organizing, and we thank you for the work you guys are doing to help people get registered to vote. Daun, do you know? Can you tell us specifically what the
October 13th?
October 13th.
October 13th.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have about a week or so to go. A little over a week to get registered, okay? And you have to register first before you go to vote, people. I just want to make sure people are clear with that. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. We had a listener reach out to us on Facebook, and he said, I have a 19-year-old son who I am stressing the importance of voting. I can't make him vote, but I told him I've never missed an opportunity to vote. I will be voting on Election Day to ensure that my vote counts. So, response to that. How do we get young people, Leelynn, to make sure that their vote counts?
Oh, man. For me, I feel like I look back on this last presidential election, and I think about those who, kind of felt like, well, my vote wouldn't have counted anyway. And I think about all those numbers of people that didn't vote and say, well, if you had voted, maybe your vote actually would have counted, because if you look at the numbers, a lot of people who didn't vote would have actually made the difference between who won or not. So I feel like, maybe getting them to be a little bit more educated on why voting is important, why you need to understand who you're voting for, what issues you're voting for, why voting a certain way makes more sense to you as a person, to you as an individual in a certain community, or you as an individual in a certain party, however way you want to vote. That's why it should matter to you. The way that somebody can represent you as a whole, you as a community, you as someone in a marginalized community as well, and what that person is supposed to do to represent you and others as well, and why it makes sense and why it's important to have somebody that actually genuinely cares about what happens to you and wants to make sure that they will do whatever they can possible to make sure that you are taken care of and that you are represented fairly and respected in a room that you may not have a voice in.
Daun, what's the best way to determine who to vote for? You know, in other words, how should you do your research on the various constitutional issues that may be on the ballot, on the people who are running? What do you tell people to do when they go, well, I don't know who to vote for?
Well, first, of course, I offer to suggest, but and then of course I say why, because I'm going to tell you why I'm voting for who I voted for. But what I tell people to do is to go to the website of the candidate, because there's so much disinformation, misinformation, information that is trying to discourage people from voting, especially people of color, that if you go to the website of the candidates, then you're going to see what their views are, what their plans are, what they say they want to do for you. The other thing I tell people is to look at the record, because we have some people who are incumbents, which means that they are in the office and they're trying to stay in that office. You can look at their voting record. You can see how they voted. That will tell you if their values are similar to yours. And that is one of the key things to look for, I think. But also, you know, there's so many issues in our communities. One person won't be able to satisfy everything that you want, but you want to vote for the person who you believe will vote in a way that will make a difference for you and your family, whether that's in education, whether that's in employment opportunities, whether that's in, how much money we're going to do in streets and roads, whether or not that's dealing with, veterans and our military and how much support we're going to do for our military. There are so many things. Healthcare is a big issue, certainly right now. So you have to look at those things and where you are in your life with your family and who you think would be the person who would get you closer to helping your family have a better way of life.
Okay. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. I know our lines are all filled up, so keep calling and you'll be able to get through. Ray joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Ray. You're on the air.
Hello. How are you today?
Doing great.
Here's my concern.
Okay.
So I am going to vote early, but my apprehension is the Electoral College. I just believe there's something wrong there, and that even though the popular vote and everybody going out in masses to vote, I think they're going to steal the election in the wrong direction. That's my concern. Since the last election, I had an issue with the Electoral College, and I'll be honest with you, this will be my third time that I voted, trying to prove to myself that my vote will count. But again, after seeing everything and the times that we're living in right now, I believe the Electoral College will be the upset for us. That's my question.
Thanks, Ray, for the call. I appreciate that. So, Daun, do you think that if we vote, and this is to both of you actually, if we vote in overwhelming numbers, that the Electoral College will have to be representative of the people's vote? Will that make a difference? Go ahead, Daun.
yes, it will make a difference. The more votes that are there, the numbers for each state will then go to the candidate who has the most votes. And that's why we're saying in overwhelming numbers, we need to make sure that we're voting in every state across this country and even in D.C. and Puerto Rico, because they're not states yet. Mm-hmm. So, yes, it does make a difference. The last election that Ray was that we've been through for the presidential election, it was a calculation that the current president and his campaign team made, that because you have to have 271, so you've got to get that number 270. So they worked it like a candidate should, even though he was not the person that I voted for. Now that we know this and people have seen this, then yes, that's why, the millions of people that were discouraged from voting and did not vote really makes a difference. So, Ray, I'm glad you're sticking in there, going to do it again. And I will also say that I am confident that this method with the Electoral College will be looked at if a certain candidate wins.
Okay. If you're just joining us, we're talking about voting with longtime public servant and elected official Daun Hester and Leelynn Brady, first Vice President, League of Women Voters in South Hampton Roads. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Donald joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Donald. You're on the air.
Hello. How you doing?
Okay.
I'll make it quick. Having grown up in the state of Mississippi, in northern Mississippi, I came into my hometown on a Wednesday, and he was killed that following day in Memphis, Tennessee. So the right to vote is very important to me. And when I was in the military, I was out in the middle of the ocean, being the legal officer, did a state voting. He had to sign all the paperwork. So, yeah, I impressed it to my daughters and every young person I talked to. And that's one advantage on the state of Mississippi, because they did try to stop us from voting. Yeah. And it's very important. You don't have to be educated, but that's simple as that.
Thank you so much for that call, Daun. And we, I am so sorry for what happened to your family. This whole idea of voter suppression, Daun and Leelynn, I want you guys to listen to a piece that we have from British Public Television. The reporter's name is Krishan Guru Murthy, and this was an investigative report that they did about voter suppression in the 2016 election. Now, while it is specifically talking about what happened with the Donald Trump campaign, the suppression tactics could be used by anyone. Let's take a listen.
It may seem hard to believe, but Donald Trump's path to the White House actually passed right along Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive here in North Milwaukee. Now, this is not Trump country, but 4 years ago, tens of thousands of normally Democratic-supporting black voters just didn't turn out for Hillary Clinton. And now we can reveal for the first time that many of them had been identified and targeted by the Trump campaign and its supporters. Their aim? Not to win their votes, it seems, but to get them to stay at home on election day. The campaign took all this information and used it to divide the country into different groups. In 16 key battleground states, the algorithm placed voters into one of 8 categories. Most likely to turn out was the base, core Trump on his side, core Clinton on hers. Those least likely to vote were marked as deadbeats and then disengaged for both sides. In the middle were the voters who might go either way and were open to persuasion. But also crucial were these 2 segments. On his side, they were called GOTV, get out the vote, and on the other, deterrence, voters who might be encouraged not to vote. The campaign would then create ads that could be targeted at the people in these groups through Facebook and other platforms. Many were dark posts, which could appear on people's Facebook feeds and then vanish. What we found is that in those crucial swing states, black voters were disproportionately categorized for deterrence. In Georgia, they made up 32% of the population, but 61% of deterrence. In North Carolina, 22% of the population, but 46% of deterrence. And in Michigan, 15% of people, but 33% of deterrence. In total, more than 3.5 million black voters were marked for deterrence.
3.5 million black voters. Your reaction, Daun?
Why can we be deterred? Misinformation, disinformation. You have to understand where your information is coming from and what you're listening to and what you're getting. It's heartbreaking, but we knew, we know what's happening. It's happening now. And that's why, I made it plain. You go to the candidate site. One of the candidates is all over Facebook and everywhere, but all of them are. Both of them are, but one more so than others. And so I don't know how to say it. You just need to make sure that you vote. You don't let anybody stop you from doing what is your right. That is your right. That is the part that bothers me. Whether you like the candidates or not, this is my right, and I'm going to do it just because it is given to me as a citizen of this country. Because once you give it away, 3.5 million people didn't go vote. You're just giving away. I'm sorry, but you are a part of what the issue is as to why we have the concerns that we have regarding the movement of our country and where our country is going. So don't be a part of the problem. Be a part of the solution and vote.
Leelynn, before I get to your response, I want to play a clip from Jamal Watkins reacting to this investigative piece. He's the vice president of the NAACP in Georgia.
The thing that's shocking / troubling about this, is that there's this category of suppression, that deterrence part. So we use data, similar voter file data, but it's to motivate, persuade, encourage folks to participate. We don't actually use the data to say who can we deter and keep at home. That just seems fundamentally, it's a shift from the notion of democracy. It's actually undermining inclusion and participation. It's not may the best candidate win at that point, it's may the best well-funded machine suppress voters and keep them at home, thereby rigging the election so that someone can win. When you think about suffrage for women, when you think about the black community suffering from poll taxes, misinformation and disinformation in the early part of last century, we actually have wrestled with that and said, that's not right. That's not who we are as a country. So to translate that type of behavior onto a social media digital platform, it's the same thing.
Leelynn, your response.
I feel a little speechless. I feel disappointed, but not surprised. It's a little disheartening that voter suppression is still going on, and like Daun said, it's really disheartening that we are allowed to be, discouraged to not use our right to vote. And I don't know. I feel I am kind of really speechless on that, and I do agree with Daun as far as be a part of the solution, not the problem. Mm-hmm. And it's I don't know if, like we were talking about, I'm kind of part of the younger generation, so I don't know if it's one of those things where it's kind of like it is what it is, or if I'm sorry. I think I'm kind of stuck on that one.
There was a, when you get into the meat of the entire investigative report, I mean, they knew things about people from, whether or not you had a dog at home, if you owned a gun, if you were planning to have children. I mean, they knew all kinds of your personality, and they would put these ads out targeting specific people, and particularly African Americans, to prevent them from even going to the polls. So beyond the idea of not voting, I mean, they didn't want you to leave the house that day. They wanted you to stay home. So we need to keep that in mind as we are trying to encourage people to get out and practice your constitutional right to vote. You deserve to have representation. You deserve to be heard. Let's talk to Joe from the United Way on line 3. Hi, Joe. You're on the air.
Good afternoon, Barbara, and thank you so much for having me on your show. And hello to your listeners. And first and foremost, I wish them good health and safety as we manage through this pandemic. But thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about the voter registration drive that the United Way has going on.
Well, here at the United Way, we believe that your vote is your voice. If you don't vote for someone else will make the decision for you. So we're asking all individuals who have not registered to vote to go to unitedwayshr.org/vote. That's unitedwayshr.org/vote. Because you know what? Elections have consequences. Voting is important because it gives you the power to elect representatives who will shape legislation that will best represent your quality of life and the quality of life for your loved ones for generations to come. And you know what, Barbara, everyone or almost everyone pays taxes. However, most people don't know how their tax dollars are spent. So voting provides you with the power to choose how your tax dollars are spent in your community, whether that's public utility projects, social services, or in your local school system. So, and now it's more than ever to learn about the candidates and the platforms they represent. You can research them online by Googling their campaign. So voting gives you the power to elect officials that will take on issues that are meaningful to you, like healthcare, social justice, and tax reform. So it's extremely important to vote.
Okay, give us that website one more time, Joe.
Sure, UnitedWaysHR.org/vote. That's United Ways with an S, HR.org/vote.
Okay, thanks so much for the call. We really appreciate it. So there are lots of ways, lots of people who are trying to help you to get registered to vote. You can also go to WHRO.org. Sam Turkin did a wonderful piece on our news page about voting and about the process and where you need to go to register. You can always go to Virginia's website. You can go to your city's website. There's information everywhere. You just got to get out there and find it and get it done. Sean joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Sean. You're on the air.
How are you?
I'm good.
Great. I have a very simple message that I gave to my kids, and I tell all young people: if you don't vote, don't complain. It's cut and dry, and usually works. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. And
have you voted already, Sean? Have you voted?
I have not voted already. No.
Okay.
I plan on going that day and voting.
Okay.
And it's probably, I'll probably stand in line for a while, but that's part of the process. And I'm sorry.
Well, no. I was just going to say we appreciate the fact that you're going to be going to the polls. That's what's important.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, sure. Yeah, I voted ever since I was able to vote, and encourage anybody I know to do it, and just let them know, hey, if you don't vote, you have no reason to gripe about things.
Okay.
So anyway.
Thank you so much. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Alan joins us from Chesapeake. Hi, Alan. You're on the air.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. I know it seems scary. It's not something they really taught in school, but it's easy to register to vote, and it's easy to vote. I'm going to be voting in person because I want to make sure my vote gets tallied the right way and that it doesn't get lost. But just to remind people, it's easy, and you'll feel good afterwards. And I know it seems a little scary.
Okay.
That was it.
All right. Thanks so much, Alan, for the call. Leelynn, tell us what do they ask you for registration? I mean, why is it scary to people?
I know for me it gets kind of scary because I move around a lot. I'm a military spouse, so sometimes I'm like, oh no, am I even going to be on this one? Is this the right polling area? So I have my ID. Even now, the ID is not required anymore, but I still show it for, out of habit. Mm-hmm. And they'll just, have me verify my name. Sometimes they'll have me verify my address or my date of birth. and then I'll sign my name in the booklet that they have just to say, oh, I was here and I voted. And then I go on to get my ballot, and I go to the little cubicle area, make my vote, turn it into the machine, and then it shows whether it counted or not, and then I'm done. So I feel like the only scary part for me probably is just that first initial part where I have to verify that I am me before I sign it. But I feel like once you do it, the first couple of times, it starts to get easier. And you're like, yep, I got it. This is easy peasy.
Daun, do you know the specific questions that they ask you in registration? I registered so long ago, I don't remember. But I mean, it's pretty much your name and address and things like that, right?
Name, address. They'll ask you for email if you have one, a phone number if you have one. They ask you for your birth date to make sure that you're of age or coming of age to be able to vote in a certain election. They ask you if you're a U.S. citizen. They ask you, the citizenship question is on there, and that's about it.
Okay, so it's not difficult, and it should not be scary, and we really want you to register to vote. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Dr. Shauna Lawson joins us from Newport News. You're on the air.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Great. My name is Shauna Lawson, and I'm calling from Virginia Organizing, the chapter in Newport News in Virginia. And basically, I was just wanting to talk about the absentee vote, that they have their early voting in person. And
Shauna, we just heard from Jay.
Yes, I know.
Okay, go ahead. So you want to talk specifically about absentee ballots. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
You can also apply for an emergency absentee ballot if you have an emergency that arises. And, you just have to have your hospitalization or illness listed, and, they will grant you the absentee ballot vote.
Okay. Can you tell us again, what are some of the emergency reasons?
The emergency reasons is if you're hospitalized or you have an illness, the death of a spouse, child, or parent, and other emergencies found to justify the receipt of an emergency absentee ballot.
Okay. Thank you so much for the call. We really appreciate it. So in terms of your ID that you need when you go to vote, Leelynn, some of the things that you can take.
Any government-issued ID, preferably with a photo, would help. So like a military ID, you can bring a passport if you want, that has your photo. You can bring your driver's license, state ID. A student ID may help, but I recommend the government-issued one.
Okay. Let's go to Savannah in Surrey. Hi, Savannah. You're on the air.
Hi. I'm calling because I want people to know that I vote in honor of my ancestors and those who paid an incredible price to make it possible for us to be here. I see this as a wake-up call to vote. I also see it as a transition vote because this is a two-party system with an electoral college that will not change during this particular time. So I think it's important for us to remember that we need to think of it as the transition, that we're going to go out and do the work that we need to do, that when the next election comes out, we're going to be way ahead of this game.
Okay. Thank you so much for that call from Surrey. We love our folks out there in Surrey. Thank you very, very much. Daun, your response.
Of course, I agree with her. I want to also just reiterate that early voting now is the same as voting on November 3rd. You're doing the same process. And so, I heard Alan say that he was going to, I think it was Sean said he's going to vote on Election Day. Some people just like to vote on Election Day. And, it's just a part of their habit and the way they do it. But I just want people to understand that early voting at the early precincts that we have open across the state are the same thing. You're doing the exact same process, and your vote is being counted on that day.
And
I just want people to know that it's the same.
And I can tell you, at least for where I voted, which was at City Hall in Norfolk, that social distancing was very much followed. There's protocol. They give you a folder with your ballot in it, and you keep the folder, you keep the pen, so they're not recycling things. I mean, it was very quick, easy, very sanitary, and so, in terms of people being afraid of being exposed because of the pandemic, there are a lot of safety measures in place for you to vote.
That's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's important.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So we've only got... Go ahead, Dawn. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, don't forget about our seniors because they don't have access. Some of them don't have access, don't even know how to use the computer to be able to request the ballot. And so if you feel comfortable, or if you know a senior, go pick them up and take them to early vote. And they will come out to the car for seniors. They don't have to get out of the car. The workers at the precincts will come out to you. And that's very important.
Okay. We have time for, I hope, one more call. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and make the call. We'll keep going with this conversation. So let's talk to Deshawn in Chesapeake. Hi, Deshawn. You're on the air.
Hi, my name is Deshawn, and I just thank you, number one, for taking my call. My comment is for those people who feel like their vote won't count because of the Electoral College. Now, there are people on the down ballot as well that you have to be concerned about that the Electoral College won't affect. And those people on the down ballot are just as important as the president, if not more so sometimes. So you have to vote, and you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So you vote, you've been given it right, make your vote count.
Thank you so very much for that call. We really appreciate that. I guess, Leelynn, what is... If there's one thing that you see, or that the League of Women Voters hear in your work in this arena, what's the biggest error, if you will, that people make in terms of voting, so that in case something happens to their vote? In other words, are they not filling out the ballots correctly? Are they not coloring in the circles right? What are they doing that is the biggest issue that they need to watch out for?
I would say it's not filling it out correctly, like what you said, as far as not filling in the circle correctly. So I would just make sure you follow all the directions that it says on the ballot to ensure that your ballot is correctly counted.
Okay. And Dawn, same question to you. Anything that you notice that people really need to be paying attention to that they don't?
No, it's just really circling in the dot and to make sure that it gets counted. When you get that piece of paper, whether it's at home or whether you're voting on Election Day.
Well, since you received an absentee ballot also, I hear people talking a lot about the confusion about these envelopes. Can you go over that again?
That's because there are 3 of them.
Okay.
So it's the envelope that the ballot comes in, which is what's mailed to your home. And in that envelope, you have 2 envelopes. One envelope that you need to, after you've completed your ballot, you put your ballot into envelope B. Isn't it B? Yeah. And then on the back of that, that's where you have to put your name, your address, and you sign it. Make sure you do that. Don't forget to do that. And then the 3rd envelope is the envelope that you put your sealed ballot in to put your stamp on to mail it back.
Okay, so it's an envelope in an envelope.
Yeah. It's really not hard. You just got to, make sure you're putting the right thing in the right envelope, make sure it's sealed and goes back.
And the other thing you also want to make sure people understand is that you need to check both sides of the ballot. Is that correct?
Yes, because the candidates are on one side, and then the referendum questions are on the back side of the ballot. So
there are 2 sides that you're voting on. You're voting on people, and you're also voting on policy. So you want to make sure that you have your vote counted in both ways. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Let's quickly talk to Lee in Virginia Beach. Hi, Lee. You're on the air.
Hi there. I just wanted to comment on, especially I agree with what Daun Hester said in the question of why are people of color allowing themselves to be deterred. And education is always the answer, I guess. And so I'd like to know if anybody does any ads that are deterring people from voting.
What are some of the, you broke up, I'm going to make sure I'm repeating your question. You were asking what were some of the ads that were deterring people from voting?
Right. Sorry, I'm just going over that.
Yes.
Yeah, so it'd be good for people to educate themselves to what to look for so they don't fall into the trap of being deterred.
Okay, I got you. Thank you, Lee, so much for the call. Very quickly, this report was based on the 2016 election, and so those ads, according to Facebook, are no longer available and are not there this time around. Facebook says that it has a whole army now of people who are looking for these types of ads and keeping them off the platform. So that's the response. Ladies, we got 2 minutes, 1 minute for each of you. Convince our listeners why they need to vote. Leelynn, let's start with you.
You need to vote for somebody who will be able to make a positive change in our world, in our country right now. Don't let this opportunity pass you by and stay with all the negative things that have been happening in the world so far. Be that positive change.
Okay, that is Leelynn Brady, and she is the first vice president of the League for Women Voters for Southampton Roads. Thank you so much for joining us. And Daun Hester, you have the last word.
Well, I just want to encourage everyone to vote because the conditions that we're living in now, one, did not have to occur. But it takes leadership. It takes someone who is concerned about the things that you value to lead a country. And we're a large country. And your vote makes the difference. And yes, that's up and down the ballot that we need to make sure that we vote.
Okay.
I believe in you, so vote.
And don't let people deter you from your constitutional right. Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely. That's Daun Hester. She is Norfolk City Treasurer. She's also a stellar member of the Another View Roundtable. And so, Daun, we'll be hearing from you again next week. And we will be right back.
I'm with my fellas, and you all are checking out Another View. Don't go anywhere. Check us out.
And welcome back. Just a reminder again, there are several organizations out there that are ready to help you to register to vote, to answer your questions. You can go to unitedways.org/vote for one of those resources. Virginia Organizing has another group of people. They're going around putting up door knockers and providing information. You can go to WHRO.org. Sam Turkin has a wonderful piece there that talks about voting. The information is available. You just have to take it upon yourself to take this very seriously and to get out and vote. And so we are so thankful that you joined us today. And if you want to share today's show with someone you know who may not be planning to vote, perhaps listening to the stories and advice we received today may help them to change their mind. Visit anotherviewradio.org to download our podcast. And please sign up for our eView newsletter. It's a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. Next week on Another View, the AV Roundtable. Things are happening so fast and furious, I won't even guess what the topic is going to be, so just tune in. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Wash your hands, stay socially distant, wear a mask, and join us again next Thursday at noon for Another View.